Good morning, Rabbi Isai. Lilu Nishma Simi Merosi Ruspas Mordechai. Omar Reb Chelboy. We're holding the bottom of Lamed Aleph on the base. Omar Reb Chelboy. Chazina Lilu Rav Huna the Korach Law Me'echad Klap Ishma. This is your mezuzah. Do you roll it this way, or do you roll it this way? So the way we roll it is Shema, this is Shema. I don't know if you could zoom in over here. Shema is what you see last as you roll it in. So you're going from Echad, you're going from the left, rolling it to the right. Chazina Rabuna the Karach Lama Echad, Klapi Shema. Voisa, Parshiyoseh, Stumos. So we're going to be discussing Sasum and Psucha. You should make them Stumos, says Rav Huna. What does Stumos mean? This is an easy one. Let me see. They moved it again. Here we go. Stumos. As you can see, basically Sasum means that there's no way to run away from the left side. The left side is closed. So if we zoom in over here, between the parishes, where it says Uvisharecha, and it says V'hayam Shamaya, it's closed. It's closed from both sides. There's a space in the center. That's the easiest way to understand Stumos. There's another shita that says that these are Stumos right over here. This is not this. That's Satum. That's also Satum in a different way. So over here you can see that this line V'hayam Shamaya ends all the way at the end. Uvisharecha ends at the end. There's a massive machlokes here between the Rambam and the Rosh, and the Sfardim paskin like the Rambam, and the Ashkenazim go with the Taz, which is like more like it's in here. So this is Ashkenazi. If you just look at it real quickly, you can see that Bisharecha does not finish at the end, and it starts open over here, and that's the sheet of the Taz. But according to Sfardim, this would be puzzle, right? According to Sfardim, this is puzzle. It's like a pshara, but they hold this is no good. Okay, Akapanim. So let's just say sasum, whatever sasum means for us, for argument's sake now. Sasa means that it's all the way to the end of the line, all the way to the end of the left side. It's closed off over there. Meisvei, how do you tell me that it should be Sasam, it should be closed? Omar Reb Shimon ben Elazar, the last line on Lamed Aleph on Beis, Remeir hoya kaisva al duchsustus. What you see over here, this is the here, the seyar. Right after the here is something what we call klav. It's a very, very thin piece of leather. And then you have a very thick piece of leather that's called the duchsustus. That's right over here. I don't know if you could see. We're talking about all this area from here. Now the really thin part, if you could zoom in, it's a different color. Remeir used to write a mezuzah on duchsustus. Duchsustus is the inner leather. There's two layers here. Coming off the here, layer number one is the klaf, layer number two, the thicker one, is the chsusos he used to use. Halacha number two, kimindaf. He would, let's see if we have something kimindaf. No, basically, this is tefillin. So tefillin are very narrow and very wide. What he's saying is, Remeir used to write a mezuzah like this way. Tall and narrow. Kimindaf. The opposite of tefillin. Voisa revach milamalo v'revach milamata. You have to put some sort of distance between. You can't go all the way. You need a margin. You need a margin like we have today in Sfarim. So it's a small margin. This one, you don't see a crazy amount of margin, but there's a little bit of klaf over here, enough to grab it, so you could grab it nicely without hurting the ksav. Voisa parshiyoseh psuchos. Now here's the problem. We just finished discussing that it should be sasum, as so, let's say, this is, for me, my brain understands this better. It's like close from the right and the left, and there's a little gap, that empty space in the middle. All of a sudden comes Rameir and says, no, psuchais. It's open. You can run out of there. If you're stuck by Yusharecha, you can get out on the other side. It's open. Marti lo, Rebbe, matam. Isn't this a contradiction to what we just said? Rafuna says it should be sasam, and you say pasuach. Marti Rebbe, matam. What's the reasoning behind this? Our two parshiyos of Shema, V'hoyim Shemaya, are not next to each other in the Torah. And I want to show that they have no connection. And by making it pasuach, it shows that there's no connection. By making sasum, that's an indication that they're connected. They follow each other. V'omar Rav Chananel Omar Rav. The bells are pointed out to me that Rav Chananel is not mentioned many times in Shas, but mostly he's mentioned here in Menachos in the last few dapim, in the coming dapim, because he was a sofer and that was his profession. So it says Rav Chananel in the name of Rav, Halacha Reb Shimon ben Elazar. So he says the halacha Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Now what? You write. He said 3 halachas here. Duchsustos, write it narrow and long, and put a little bit of a space on top, and that the parashas are pasuach. So the halach is like him. My love absuchos. Doesn't it mean that the halach is like him, that you should have it open at the end and not closed? Says the Gemara, no. What he meant is that the halach is like him, arevach. Leave a little bit of a space on top. Don't put the Shema all the way at the end on top. Leave a little space. To me, this doesn't look like enough space. But who am I? I don't know. I guess every mezuzah is written like this. Fine. Says Gemara, v'kama revach. How much is this space? Omer Rav Menashe bar Yaakov. V'amri lo. Omer Rav Shmuel bar Yaakov. Kimalei akbod in sifri. A clothespin. Omer le abayil Rav Yosef. Adloi tizber dechi Omer Rav arevach. Let me prove to you that when Rav said halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Elazar, he meant only one thing. He only meant that you have to leave a little bit on top, and he didn't mean that you should write a mezuzah open and not closed. But Rav Islay min Haga. Rav holds that it's a minhag. The minhag is very, very strong. The minhag in Klal Yisrael is to do a mezuzah closed, not pasuach. So how could you say, oh, I paskin you should do it open, when Klal Yisrael does it closed? Don Rav Omer Rav Kahana Omer Rav. Here we go. How do we know that Rav goes with the minhag? Im Yava Eliyo, even if Eliyo out of himself comes, v'yoymar choltzim b'minol, you should use a soft shoe, shoymim loy. Ain't choltzim b'sandal, but if he says, do not do chalitza with a hard shoe, ain't shoymim loy. Why? Shekvar nagu on b'sandal, I have here, it's supposed to be hard. This is not hard, but this is what we use today. And what he's saying is, if Eliyahu comes and says, you could use this, then go ahead and use it. The soft one. But this is what, I don't know why they use it today like this. But if he says, do not use the hard one, don't listen to it. Okay, weiter. Zog the Gemara. V'Rav Yosef Amarav Kano Marav Im Yova Eliyahu v'Yoymar Ein Choltzim b'Minol. This is the reverse. Before he said, if Eliyahu comes and says, use this, so we can do it together. If Eliyahu Navi says, use this, what does that mean to me? That I wasn't using it until now. And if Eliyahu Navi comes and says, do not use this, that means I was using this until now. There's sort of a minhag within here. There's a little bit of a, they weren't really using it, but they were, if they do use it, I'm telling you, don't use it. So, so the opposite lashon. Before is choltzim b'minol. He says, don't use it. Shomerloi. We listen to that. Ein choltzim b'sandal. Ein shomerloi. That's the same as before. If he says, do not use the hard one, we don't listen to him. Why? Shekvar nahagu am b'sandal. The bottom line is here, you see that minhag is what counts. And if minhag counts, then we write a mezuzah sasum, closed, so that's what counts. Why you tell me that the halacha is you should do an open mezuzah when everybody's using closed? What's the difference between the two? The shyness over here, minol lechatchila ikebenayu. Exactly what I just explained is the pshat that we used to use the soft one, and Eliyahu Navi is going to come and say don't use it, or the pshat is we didn't use it, and Eliyahu is going to come and say we did. In other words, could you use this today before Eliyahu Navi comes? Could we use a soft one lechatchila? So akol panim, what do we see from here? So obviously, when we said that Allah is like Reb Shimon ben Elazar, we weren't saying that the Allah is like him, that you should use an open mezuzah when everybody's using clothes, and that's the minhag. You can't go against the minhag. So it must be that he's talking about Revach, Shema Mino. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Omar mitzvah la'asos in stumois. So comes Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, listen, what he said is that you could do open. He didn't mean you should do open. The lechatchila, you should do a mezuzah closed stumois. We have dinah besuchas, but if you happen to do it open, shapir dami, it's okay. Umay besuchas the Kamar Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Absolutely, he didn't say you should do it like that. Even the open ones are okay. Let me say, I have a raya. Kayotze boy, Sefer Torah Shabbalah, or Tefillin Shabbalah. Listen to this. You have a Sefer Torah, it already older Sefer Torah. You get it from the war. You know these Sefer Torahs that the words are popping off. It's like hundreds of thousands of mistakes, not even worth fixing. What do? You have to put it in Geniza. So you come up with a murdic idea. You open it up to the parsha of Mezuzah. You take a scissors. You cut out, Shema, and you cut out V'hayim Shemaya. You put them together. You have a nice Mezuzah. Is that okay? No, it's not okay. Why? Because you can never go downwards in Kedusha. And a Sefer Torah has much more Kedusha than a Mezuzah. It's a full Sefer Torah. Tefillin has more Kedusha than a Mezuzah because Tefillin is 4 parshiyas and a Mezuzah is 2. So you cannot go from a higher Kedusha to a lower Kedusha. Sefer Torah Shabbalu, Tefillin Shabbalu, ain't noising Mezuzah. You cannot make a Mezuzah out of it. Why? L'fisha Eimarid, Kedusha Chamur, Kedusha Kala. So the Gemara is going to ask here 3 or 4 questions, at least 3. There's other problems with a mezuzah coming from a Sefer Torah. One problem is that a mezuzah has to be sasum, or the opposite. Yeah, it has to be sasum. The Sefer Torah is sasum, and according to you, that you say that it has to be open, you passing like Reb Shimon ben Elazar, it has to be open. How could you make a mezuzah from a Sefer Torah? It's open, it's closed, and it has to be open. Problem number 2 is, so what about sirtut? You have to have lines in a mezuzah. Maybe Sefer Torah doesn't. We passing, you do. Different questions like that. It's made from different parchment. And if the parchment is important, what we learned, the mezuzah from the chsustos, the klav of Sefer Torah is different. So how do you get around these issues? So the Gemara says, if there wouldn't be a problem of going from the higher kedusha to the lower kedusha, it seems like you could take a scissors, cut out a mezuzah from Sefer Torah, amai. Why? Hacha stumas. Sefer Torah is closed off when you write the parsha mezuzah. V'chapsucha, according to you, has to be open. Says Gemara Dilma lahashlim. Maybe the Sofer wrote a nice mezuzah. He's missing 1 or 2 psukim in the bottom. I found this in my, I guess I did this once upon a time, some sugya. If you look closely, here's a mezuzah. I cut it, mamish down the middle, and then I sewed it together with gidin. So we're saying something similar. The Sofer, let's say, wrote all this, and he needed a little piece to Hamaridin Oisin. Okay, nevertheless, if I could go from a Sefer Torah to mezuzah, you would make a mezuzah out of a Sefer Torah. But there's a problem. This is Allah that came directly from the Rebbeinu Shalom to Moshe Rabbeinu. Tefillin ala klaf, u'mezuzah ala d'chsustos. The tefillin are made on the piece of leather that's closest to the hair, and mezuzah is the piece of leather that's further away from the hair, on the d'chsustos. It's different pieces. So how are you going to make it out of tefillin? Klaf b'mokim basar. So it's very, very simple. The klaf is the one closest to the hair. Now you're not going to write on the piece of leather. There's one piece of leather, the one closest to the hair. It has 2 sides. One side had hair on it, and the other side didn't have hair on it. So you're supposed to write on what side? Logic, the one without hair. Now the sustos has 2 sides to it also. One is closest to the animal, like where my thumb is, and one is closest to the piece of leather, to the klaf. Where are you supposed to write? The one closest to the klaf. It's all common sense. Very good. Rich Marinelli got it. You don't write on this side, over here, the one closest to the fat, to the animal. You write on the one closest to the klaf. It's nice and smooth. So, there's Allah al Sinai, klaf b'mokim basar. When you're writing a tefillin on the thin piece of leather that's attached to the hair, you don't write on the hair part. To get that hair off, it's a whole process. The washing machine, some people use chemicals, some people are makbid not to use chemicals, a whole zach. D'chsustos b'mokim seir. But when you're writing on the d'chsustos, you're going towards the hair. What's towards the hair? Next to the klaf, not next to the animal. You're going towards the hair. So so how could you use tefillin to make a mezuzah? It's different pieces of leather, different pieces of parchment. L'mitzvah. That you should make tefillin out of this piece, not this piece. That's a special. You want to be machmer, that's a mitzvah. Says the Gemara, no, don't tell me that's a mitzvah. V'tayu shina pasul. If you don't do it like that, it's possible. Bit tefillin. No, we could be doichek and say only in tefillin if you change and do tefillin on the duchsustus instead of leather, instead of the cloth, then it's possible, but not on a mezuzah. But so if you go from a cloth, you use a mezuzah on cloth, you're okay. If you do tefillin on duchsustus, then you're not okay. But shina ben bezev pasul. If it says even a mezuzah that's written on cloth is no good. Says Gemara, no. Either bit tefillin, you don't understand it. Both of them are tefillin, but if you wrote the cloth on this side next to the here, that's no good. And the other problem with tefillin is if you're going to use the duchsustus cloth, even in the right direction, you wrote it on the right side, the side that's closest to the here, no good by tefillin. You know what? At the end of the day, it's a machlokes tanoim. That what? The sanya shina b'zeh b'zeh apostle. If you change it up, you write a tefillin on the sustos, you write mezuzah on klaf, apostle according to the Tanakhama. Rebbe Acha machshem shum Rebbe says Rebbe said, Rebbe Acha machshem shum Rebbe Achoy Rebbe Chanina v'amri lo mishmei the Rebbe Kiva Rebbe Chanina. Give out. There's a Tana that says it's okay. Says the Gemara. One more question. Homer Eden Oisen. If you're able to go to a lower madrega of Kedusha and go from a Sefer Torah to mezuzah, it would be okay. Just take a scissors, cut out the parsha mezuzah, hang it up on your door. But by sirtut, this is sirtut Rabbi Yisai. It's very cool. This machine goes exactly whatever it is, and he goes back and forth, hand. But you have to make an indentation in the actual leather, and you follow, makes it nice and straight, and Zakeli Van Veu. You need sirtut. If you don't have sirtut on a mezuzah, pasul. He says that the sirtut of a mezuzah is halacha l'Moshe Messinai. So let me ask you a question. Maybe we were talking about that he found a tefillin that had sirtut in it. I think a lot of our tefillin. Let me see this tefillin over here. Yeah, sirtut. This tefillin has sirtut. We do sirtut on tefillin. So maybe he found tefillin that has sirtut, and he chopped out the mezuzah section and he hung it up on his door. You ask me, how come you need sirtut? It has sirtut. The tefillin here, like tefillin in our generation, has sirtut. That's Tos's question. Listen to Tos. I love the answer. I'm just showing it to you for the answer. The minute was not to do it. And maybe you didn't find it, but maybe the guy did it. Says Tosfos, if you potter from doing something, but you say when you do it, nick your head yot. Again, I'm not passing anything here. There's a concept. If you don't need to do it and you do it, you're a head yot. Now there are things that we do that you don't need to do. A lot of things that we need to do and we don't need to do and we do, and vice versa. So you have to know. Those who know. But if you're doing it for the mitzvah shabai because you want to do a nice, it's harder for you to write and you want to write straight. There's no. You're not a hedyot. If you're doing it because I'm makbid on sirtut, but the akbad of sirtut is only in a mezuzah, then you're a hedyot. Now you're adding to the Torah. But you're not. You want to be a sofer that writes neatly? Why not? And here's another beautiful thing that I found in Tosfos here. I've been saying this for a long time, and I just found it in Tosfos. The Vilna Gaon says, which was very bothersome to me, that you don't have to be makbid on a very expensive parashiyas in tefillin. There's no zekeli van veu in tefillin, he says. Why? Because you'll never see it. It's locked up in a box. And wow, and my father went and spent all this money that he didn't have. And I'm running around to the soifrim and getting this and that, and he's the best. And no, he's even better. The Vilna Gaon said, I'm a gronik. So the truth is, I should open up my tefillin, take out the parashiyas, and put simple ones in there. Look what Tosfos says over here. Beautiful. It's Rabbeinu Tam. V'amar Rabbeinu Tam. The Sefer Torah by sirtut mishum zekeli van veu. There's a mitzvah zekeli van veu. Aval tefillin the mechusim ba'or lo'bayu sirtilt the leishayach bunai. Since tefillin are covered, there's no zakeli vanveyu, says Taisvis. This Taisus, this is the Rishonim say this. Oh, so they ask the Gemara, how can you make a mezuzah out of tefillah and you need tzirtut? Says the Gemara, you know, Tanoi, it's actually machlokes Tanoi if you need tzirtut. This is unbelievable. There's a halacha you're not allowed to say a pasuk bal peh, and there's a halacha that you're not allowed to write a sefer Torah bal peh. Let's say you know Bereshis bara elikim es hashemayim v'saaretz. You know it. So it's very possible that pasuk yes. But let's say, I don't know, you're a genius. You know, you went to Minkach, Hazini faneim tashumayim the himmel v'uretz the aid. Okay, you know all these things, Balpeh, you're not allowed to write it. You have to look into a chumash, hazinu, shemayim, shemayim. That's the halacha, because you might make a mistake. But when it comes to tefillin mezuzah, since it's so common and people know it so well, shaloi ben aksav. Tefillin mezuzah you can write Balpeh. Here's a Tana that says both of them, even a mezuzah doesn't need sirtut. So it's not a problem. I found my tefillin that doesn't have sirtut. I chopped it up. I put it in my door without sirtut because I don't need sirtut because I go according to this Tana. The bottom line is says tefillin loy boy sirtut. Tefillin doesn't need sirtut. Mezuzah boy sirtut. Yes, you can do Balpeh. My taima migras grisin because everybody knows it. So la halacha, by the way, la halacha. Sukkim that everybody knows Balpeh, you're allowed to say Balpeh. But what if you know Balpeh and no one else knows Balpeh? Well, you know it. You're a genius and you know. No. You know about Peh, but 95% of the Klal Yisrael doesn't know about Peh. Memeli, you have to say it in a chumash. That's Allah. That's how we pass. Today, nobody would dare do something like this. Even sit on a bench that has a siddur, a chumash. How? How come? From this Gemara right over here. He was about to. If you look on the side, it says he wanted to. He wanted to sit down on a couch that had a Sefer Torah on it. And this is, I was just thinking about Noam when it was, because when we went on safari, he's schlepping the Sefer Torah in his back the whole time, and on the plane, you have to be careful, like when you're in a taxi. You go into the airport, what are you doing with the Sefer Torah? Where exactly are you putting this? You have to constantly think. So he took some paint bucket and he flipped it over and he put the Sefer Torah on top of it. And then he sat down. He holds, and this is how we pass. You now sit down on a bench that has a Sefer Torah. And he argues on Rabbi Yochanan. He holds, you're allowed to sit down on a bed that has a Sefer Torah. And somebody tell you, have a raya from a story. What happened in the story? He also realized there's a Sefer Torah on the bed. He jumped off, mamish like a. You ever saw once in a while you get to see like a woman sitting somewhere and all of a sudden like a bee shows up. What happened? Like the jump, the pachad. As if a snake bit him. Oh, says the Gemara, awesome Sefer Torah gabi karkava. What happened was they're bringing the choshev gadol into. And he noticed that somebody took something off the bed and put it on the floor. So this Amaretz was like, I'm going to make room for the gadol. He took a Sefer Torah and put it on the floor. He thought, when he sat down, he thought maybe it's like, a child, I don't know what, a box. Then all of a sudden he looks down, he can't believe his eyes. He sees a Sefer Torah on the floor. So then he jumped as if a snake bit him. But don't worry about it, he says. Sit on the bed. Yeah, the bed was a little loud. It's the lower part of the bed. I saw. Sit on the bed. Omer Rav Yehuda. That's according to Rabbi Yochanan. He holds you're allowed to sit on the bed with the Sefer Torah. Omer Rav Yehuda, Omer Shmuel. Ksovei geres psula. If you write a mezuzah like a letter, in other words, so before we said what's a geres yesterday, we said geres means long and narrow. But today Rashi says geres means without the sirtut and without too much diktuk, whatever that means. It's puzzle. My timer. As a ksiva ksiva mesefer says the word ksiva by get. By Sefer Torah, by mezuzah, it also says ksiva. It says 3 times v'kasav. So we learned that you need sirtut and diktuk. Oh, can you take a mezuzah, put it in a temporary stick, and put it next to your door, lean it up against the doorpost? Does that work? Yes or no? The answer is no. Sakana. It's a tremendous sakana. Ve'ein ba mitzvah. Fine, we'll just stop over here. Listen to this. When they went to hotels, that hotel didn't have a mezuzah. They would put the mezuzah, they would take the stick that Goldenkopf gave them, whatever his name is, put it on the door. Even though you're not yoitza, but just to remember there's a concept called mezuzah. Rabbi Sai, have a wonderful day.
Merit the schus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a shir today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDY.com.